A creature that crawls, yet carries the memory of the stars. A being feared by millions, yet worshipped by ancient kings, sages, and shamans. This is not just a creature. It is the serpent -- the memory of transformation itself. In one hand, it represents danger, temptation, chaos. In the other, healing, awakening, and eternal return. Why did ancient civilizations revere the serpent as a sacred bridge between body and spirit? Why was it carved on temple walls, worn by gods, and hidden in the spine of the human form? And why? Was it later demonized? What if the serpent wasn't evil, but a map, a symbol of shedding illusions, of dying to who you were, to be reborn as who you truly are? Because to those who remember, the serpent doesn't slither in shame. It spirals upward in light. In this episode, we decode the serpent as the ancient code of transformation and reveal why what you fear might be the very key to your rebirth. Part 1. Ancient Serpent Myths and Cosmic Origins. Before the serpent was feared, it was worshipped. Not as a beast, but as a bridge between earth and sky, between death and rebirth, between the seen and the invisible. Long before the Bible cast it as the villain, the serpent was divine. In ancient Egypt, the uraeus, cobra of flame, rose from the forehead of pharaohs, symbolizing awakened sight, royal fire, and the protection of goddess Wadjet. The serpent wasn't crawling in the dust. It stood between the eyebrows, where intuition becomes vision. In India, the great cosmic serpent Shesha holds the universe upon its coils. And at the base of every human spine, a coiled serpent lies sleeping. Kundalini, the energy of awakening, waiting to spiral upward. In the Mayan world, the serpent was not a monster. It had feathers. Quetzalcoatl, the plumed serpent, a symbol of knowledge, harmony, and transformation. It descended from the sky, not to punish, but to teach. Why did so many cultures, separated by oceans and time, see the serpent not as a threat, but as a sacred force? The serpent sheds its skin. It moves in silence, dwells in shadow, and always returns renewed. They saw the serpent as a living metaphor for the soul's evolution, to die many times, yet never be destroyed. Even the caduceus, used today as the symbol of medicine, shows two serpents spiraling upward as central staff, balancing forces, restoring health, activating light. That wasn't accidental. It was memory, encoded. The serpent was never just a reptile. It was a code, a frequency of transformation. Wherever you find ancient mystery schools, you'll find the serpent, coiled in glyphs, woven into rituals, whispered through symbols that only the initiated could read. But over time, something changed. The same symbol that once adorned crowns and temples was now portrayed as deception, darkness, sin. In the next part, we'll explore why and how the serpent's sacred meaning was buried beneath fear, fire, and forbidden knowledge. But before that, remember this: the oldest stories of humanity didn't begin with a man or a god or a war. They began with a serpent, gliding between worlds, offering not punishment, but transformation. And perhaps it still is. Part 2. Shedding the Skin: Death, Transformation, and Renewal. The serpent doesn't grow by force. It grows by surrender. not by chasing power, but by letting go of what no longer fits. When it's time, the serpent finds a quiet place. It rubs its body against stone, against friction, against the resistance of what it used to be. And then it sheds. Layer by layer, its old identity peels away. Not with fear, but with instinct, with wisdom. This is not survival. This is transformation. That's why the ancients saw the serpent as more than a symbol. They saw it as a ritual in motion. No ascent begins without descent. The soul must die before it remembers how to rise. Not a physical death, but a symbolic one. The death of false selves, the death of masks, the death of stories that once protected you, but now imprison you. Shamans knew this. In rites of passage across cultures, initiates would enter darkness, caves, sweat lodges, isolation, to symbolically die to the world they once knew and emerge reborn, just like the serpent. In the mystery schools of Egypt and Greece, death before death was a sacred teaching. The soul had to descend, to face its shadow, to leave behind everything it clung to, and only then could it rise. Even in modern psychology, transformation requires ego death, a release of the false self, so the deeper self can emerge. The serpent's skin is not just physical. It represents identity, belief, and most of all, attachment. And the more tightly we cling to what we think we are, the more painful the shedding becomes, because growth isn't about adding more. It's about removing what blocks the light. Every time you feel the world collapsing, every time a version of you can't go on, you are being invited to shed, to die a small death so something deeper can live. This is why the serpent appears at thresholds, in dreams, in myths, in visions. It does not chase. It waits. It coils at the edge of your next becoming, not as a threat, but as a mirror. Will you cling to your skin, or will you trust the shedding? In the next part, we'll meet the serpent's hidden power, not just as a symbol of death, but as a source of sacred energy. Because when the serpent rises, it doesn't crawl, it spirals upward, carrying the soul into new dimensions of light. Part 3. Kundalini and the creative force of the serpent. There is a serpent inside you, not in myth, not in metaphor, in energy. Coiled at the base of your spine, it sleeps. Silent, waiting, ancient. The yogis called it Kundalini, the divine feminine, the serpent of creative force. And when it awakens, nothing stays the same. It doesn't rise like smoke. It coils upward like a living flame, climbing the spine of memory, twisting upward through your chakras, unlocking gates of perception you didn't know existed. This energy is not imagined. It pulses, it vibrates, it transforms. As it moves, it burns through blockages, fears, traumas, illusions. Not to harm, but to purify. And when it reaches the crown, consciousness explodes. You do not become divine. You remember you always were. The serpent, long feared, is the keeper of your sacred power. That's why it was buried, why its name was twisted, why the religions of control turned it into a devil. Because if you awaken the serpent, you no longer obey, you no longer beg, you create. Kundalini is not a theory, it's your original design. Your body is a temple, your spine is the altar, the serpent is the flame. And when you align breath, focus, and intention, that flame rises. Every spiral of the serpent is a code dash, a frequency of expansion. That's why spiral and serpent have always been bound together, both unlock the same doorway. The ascension of the soul. In sacred temples of India, serpents were carved into the walls, not to scare, but to remind. In tantric practice, the rising serpent is ecstasy, union, transcendence. In alchemical texts, the Ouroboros, serpent eating its tail, is the endless cycle of death and rebirth, light and shadow, divine and human. The serpent is the architect of cycles and the force that breaks them. It is not chaos, it is conscious fire. And when that fire rises, so does your awareness. You begin to feel energy in motion. You begin to create from presence. You begin to live from truth. This is why the serpent is sacred, because it is the soul in motion, not crawling, ascending. In the next part, we'll confront a difficult truth. Why was such a powerful symbol demonized? Why did the world turn its back on the serpent? And what was lost when we forgot its name? Because when you fear the serpent, you fear your own power. And when you remember it, you begin to rise. Part 4. The demonization of the serpent symbol. If the serpent is sacred, if it holds the power to awaken, why was it cast as the enemy? One word: control. Because a soul that knows its inner fire cannot be ruled, and the serpent was always that fire. In the book of Genesis, the serpent appears, not as a monster, but as the one who whispers, "You will not die, you will become like gods." Not evil, rebellious, liberating. It was the serpent who offered the forbidden fruit, not of sin, but of self-awareness. And for that, it was exiled from the story. But ask yourself, why would a symbol of wisdom become the image of evil? The answer lies in what was lost when it was buried. The serpent represents intuition, sensuality, creative force, inner power. Everything that empowers the individual and decentralizes spiritual authority. So to maintain control, the narrative was rewritten. The serpent became Satan. Kundalini became dangerous. The feminine became sinful, and the gateways to transformation, ritual, breath, body, nature, became forbidden. This was not spiritual truth. This was spiritual politics. A deliberate inversion. The rise of patriarchal systems that feared the wild, the instinctive, the uncontrollable. Systems that needed obedience, not sovereignty. And so, the serpent, once carved into crowns, once painted on temple walls, was buried beneath fear and fire. But the symbol never died. It simply went underground. In secret orders, mystery schools, esoteric texts, the serpent lived on, guarding the threshold of real power, because those who dared look past fear found not a monster, but a teacher. The Gnostics saw the serpent in Eden, not as the deceiver, but as the liberator, the one who broke the illusion of blind obedience. In Eastern traditions, the serpent was never banished. It was venerated, honored, fed with breath, mantra, movement. Even now, modern seekers feel its pull, not in temples, but in the spine, in dreams. In the silent knowing that says, you are more than what you've been told. The demonization of the serpent was not about protecting humanity. It was about disempowering it. In the next part, we'll meet the serpent in its truest form, not as devil or deity, but as guardian. Because in every ancient path of transformation, the serpent stands at the gate, and only those willing to shed their fear may pass through. Part 5. The Serpent As guardian of wisdom and inner ascension, the serpent doesn't block the path. It guards it. It doesn't ask for fear. It demands truth. In every authentic tradition of awakening, there is a gatekeeper. And more often than not, that gatekeeper is a serpent. In Egyptian mythology, serpents guard the duat, the underworld of transformation. Souls must pass them not by force, but by knowing who they are. In Greek mystery schools, the serpent encircles the initiates. Not to threaten, but to test. Have you shed illusion? Have you burned false identity? Are you ready to remember? The serpent is not a punisher. It is a mirror, reflecting what still clings to your skin. If you flinch, it coils. If you stand in presence, it parts. It is not here to hurt. It is here to reveal. Because ascension isn't a gift, it's a passage, earned not through ritual, but through inner integrity. The serpent asks, can you leave behind who you were to become who you are? Can you carry your power without needing control? Can you rise without denying the ground beneath you? In this way, the serpent becomes the final teacher, not of belief, but of embodied truth, not of worship, but of sovereignty. And when you pass through its gaze, you don't escape the world. You re-enter it, awake. This is why the serpent was feared, because those who faced it no longer bowed to systems built on illusion. They saw through the veil. They remembered the spiral. They activated the fire within. The serpent was never evil. It was simply honest. Too honest for those who wanted control. Too wild for those who wanted order. Too alive for those who wanted you asleep. But now the symbol returns, not on scrolls, not in temples, but in you. You are the initiate now, and the serpent coils not outside you, but within. It waits at the base of your spine, at the edge of your fear, at the threshold of your becoming. Not as a beast, but as a blessing in disguise. In the final CTA, you'll remember this truth. You don't need to conquer the serpent, you need to become it. Because rebirth is not a concept, it is a choice. And it starts where your old skin ends. Final CTA. Become the serpent reborn. You were never meant to kill the serpent. You were meant to remember you are it. Not a creature to fear, but a force to awaken. Every cycle of loss, every moment of rupture, was your skin peeling away, making room for the real you to emerge. The serpent was not your enemy. It was your initiation. And now, you are standing at the threshold, old skin behind you, light ahead. You don't need to escape your shadow. You only need to rise through it. Share this message with those who are ready to shed, to spiral, to return. Because when you awaken the serpent within, you don't just change, you rebirth.